But today we're really here to talk about fairness. And I've talked about it in this place before, and I will never stop talking about this until I leave this place. And that is the idea of having a bar of dignity in our country. A bar of dignity that we don't let anyone fall below, that we hold one another account, whether we're an individual or we're a corporation, whether we're part of a big family or a small family, regardless of where we're from and our age, that we commit collectively to having a bar of dignity that will allow people to live the best life that they can. So today's motion that the NDP has brought forward is talking specifically about that bar of dignity. We know that across this country, so many people are falling behind. We know they don't have enough food to eat. We know that they are unable to find somewhere safe to live. I am still saddened, disgusted, and shocked by how many seniors call my office from across this whole country, talking about how close they are to losing their home. How some of them, even as old as people in their 80s, are couch surfing from one family friend to another because they simply have nowhere safe to live. When I talk to parents, and they've come to me across my constituency talking about the fact that they don't have enough money to make ends meet, that they're making hard choices about what they're going to feed their children and whether or not they can make the basic necessities of their life happen. And Madam Speaker, I don't know about you, but I've lived through some very hard financial times. And as a parent, one of the hardest things about those hard times was saying no to my kids on things that I would regularly just make sure that they had. And that's what's happening in this country. Why we are talking about this bar of dignity is because we know at the same time that people in this country are worried if they will be able to feed themselves. I've talked to parents who are not eating their last meal of the day so that their kids have enough to eat for the whole day. At the same time that is happening, we know that CEOs in grocery stores are seeing huge returns. We're seeing people in oil and gas industry at the top echelon of that, making more profit than they've seen in over 30 years. So while the most vulnerable of us, the most hardworking, in my opinion, of us, the everyday people who do their jobs, they go to work every day, they come home, they are doing nothing wrong. They are doing nothing wrong. They are paying the price of inflation, and they are paying the price of the wealthy becoming wealthier. So we know that the CEO of Sobeys has been awarded a total compensation package of $8.6 million in 2022, which is up over 15% from the previous year. Now, I don't know about the rest of the members in this place, but I can promise from the constituents I talk to, they are not seeing their wages increase by 15%. They're not seeing that return of hard work that they are often providing so that wealthy people can get these huge, huge extra payments. They're not seeing it. And that's shameful in a country like ours. It's shameful. And so, I keep hearing discussions from the Liberal side and the Conservative side about should we be giving people this little bit of money to help with their dental care? We're hearing that from the Conservative side. $500 just to help, one-time payment, just to help get through this next period of time. And I think that's absolutely essential. But what is so sad is when we're listening to both the Conservatives and Liberals talk about not addressing this issue of making sure that the very ultra-rich are paying their fair share. So we hear stuff from this side, from the government side, but we don't see that action. What we do see is reports like I saw just the other day of $30 billion that could have been brought to Canada to help with key important things like non-market housing. Housing that seniors could afford to live in with their very limited fixed income. that people who are struggling one day to the next with different challenges would have a place to stay, a place to be home. We know that this is happening because there's tax loopholes. Madam Speaker, I bet you there's a lot of people across this country right now that are working very hard and they pay their taxes. They do it. They do it during tax time. I talk to seniors who have a little bit extra, they pay their taxes. I talk to working families, they pay their taxes. Why is it that in this country we have a system that really builds in these loopholes that allows the very wealthy who can afford people who understand these systems to get away with paying less? Why should the hardworking Canadians in this country pay more in terms of share than those who make so very much? So while this is happening and we see CEOs walking away with huge bonuses, getting incredible raises of 15%, having millions of dollars in annual income, we are seeing that 24% of people are cutting back on how much basic food that they buy. And that is real people in our communities that are having to make these hard decisions. And it's not fair. It's not fair. And I think we need voices in this place that are fighting for fairness, that are saying, hey, it isn't right that we're seeing this big disparity. We're seeing it grow every single year, where everyday Canadians are staying here and the ultra wealthy are rising and rising and rising. I hope that everybody in this place is going to support this, because this is about saying we're going to hold those who are making excess profit accountable. We're going to hold them to account, and we're going to make sure that they finally pay their fair share so that the bar of dignity is there for all. Madam Speaker, not too long ago, we had an incident in one of my communities where some young people were out addressing people who are unhoused in a manner that is less than profoundly kind. And that just told me that as we don't fight this lack of fairness, we're allowing for things to happen in our society that we will have to live the long-term consequences of. It is hard for people who are unhoused, and it's hard for their loved ones, it's hard for businesses, it's hard for everyone. But we don't have a government that's taking it seriously in a profound way, and they're not taking the action to address fairness. I think it is really sad that we are now living in a country where eating without worry is becoming less and less of a reality. Eating without worry is now becoming a privileged place to be. And I think that's absolutely shameful and that we need to do better. Madam Speaker, there's things that we can do, and this motion provides it. We can strengthen the Competition Act. We know that in European countries, the competition law can fine people substantively. So we need to do that. We need to make sure there isn't the price gouging. And they've used it. They've used it to make sure that pharmaceutical companies are not increasing medication costs, especially, for example, cancer drugs. Right now, we have a competition law in Canada that has no teeth, that has no way of addressing this. So this bill is about accountability to the fairness, and the accountability to the hardworking people of Canada. So it's time that we put it in place, and I hope that every member in this House supports it. Thank you.
Then comments, the Honourable Member for Kings Heads.
Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her remarks this afternoon. When we look at the text of the motion, I think most of the members in this House would agree that the conversation around food inflation and pricing is an important one, but it seems to suggest that there's already a predetermined outcome, that grocers and CEOs in this country are absolutely price gouging. And when the member from Malahat, Cowish and Langford raised his point, I asked the question to him about whether or not there could be a correlation between the fact that many Canadians would have been buying groceries at home over the last year as opposed to eating out at restaurants, and that because of the inflationary pressures that we're seeing, prices could have been up. but grocery profits also could have been up because of the changed dynamic of how we were actually purchasing food and feeding ourselves over the last couple of years. Does this member think that there's a plausible rationale for why those two things are happening, or is it just her assertion that it's absolutely grocers are price fixing the system here in Canada?
Honourable member for North Island Powell River.
Well, Madam Speaker, I thank the member for his question. And, you know, one of the things that I have talked about for many years prior to this job as well is that systems matter. They matter profoundly because we can try to trust people and hope that people are doing the right thing all the time. And you know, I'm a person who usually believes that. I believe that most people have a good heart and they care about people. But without robust systems, we cannot assure that. So what this motion talks about is having that Canadian competition law, making it more assertive and aggressive and accountable for everyday Canadians. So we can speculate who's doing what, but until we have the system that holds people to account and systems to account, we'll never be at the place we need to be.
The honourable member for Lambton Kent Middlesex.
Madam Speaker,
She's been
thank you
trying.
to my colleague for her great speech full of compassion. I hear from my constituents on a regular basis too that they're having difficulties making ends meet, and it's not just Canadians right now. It's actually, we're seeing there's food insecurity across this globe actually, and if we don't have farms in Canada, we don't have food. If we don't have viable area here in Canada to produce food, if we don't have good policy to back our farmers up, we won't have food sovereignty in Canada. So we won't be able to feed not only just ourselves, we won't be feeding the world. So I'm just wondering if and we will have a global food shortage. So I'm wondering if my colleague can comment on what support she thinks that we need to see from the government and what we could be doing to improve supports to our farmers to make sure that we can continue to have food sovereignty in Canada, have food security for folks so that they have available and affordable, nutritious food here in Canada.
Thank you. Honourable member for North Island Powell River.
Well, I really thank the member for this thoughtful question. You know, the area that I live in, we do have different farms of different sizes that do incredible work to feed our communities. And one of the things that's unique in our area is we live on Vancouver Island, and we have 3 days of food for people. That's it. So if there is any emergency, there is a lot of concern about what we're going to do to address that fact, that there's 3 days of food on the whole island for the people who live there, and if we can't get food into our communities, it's going to have a profound impact. So part of the solution, I believe all levels of government has to be working with farmers to make sure that they have a robust ability to do their work. I know that in my riding, I went to visit a farmer not too long ago, and of course on Vancouver Island, we're seeing drought, which we've never ever seen before. And one of the things that the farmer showed me is she dug a significantly huge hole so that during the winter, it filled up with water. And she was able to keep all of her produce watered from that hole, even during the drought. So she talked about how we need to do more work on those sort of innovative solutions.